Now let's talk about those confidence numbers. Joanne Hsu joins us from the University of Michigan, where she is the director of the surveys of consumers there. And this one looks particularly good, Joanne. Do I have that wrong? You know, just on the headline, the number beat expectations and was better than the prior reading, and inflation expectations are lower than the survey and lower than the previous readings.
We're absolutely seeing some improvement from November. I think the inflation expectations numbers are definitely moving in a favorable direction, both in the short run and the long run. So that's definitely welcome news. We also saw a little bit of an increase in overall sentiment, but it's not large, and we're still at very low levels, historically speaking. So consumers are not feeling confident about the economy, but they're certainly feeling no worse. And they are starting to feel a little bit of relief on the inflation front, on the inflation expectations front. They're still expecting inflation to persist. Don't get me wrong about that. However, they're not feeling as pessimistic about it as they were in previous months.
How much does this actually affect spending? Like when you look at the mood of the consumer or inflation expectations of the consumer, how much does that follow through into actual consumption decisions?
One of the things that I think is important to look at are differences between now and the 2022, the height of the inflationary episode right after the pandemic. Now, historically speaking, when people feel confident about the economy, they tend to spend more. When they feel less confident, they tend to spend less. But in 2022, they felt very unconfident, but at the same time, they were willing to spend. The one key factor back then was that labor markets were incredibly strong, and people felt very, very confident about their incomes. So even though they didn't feel great about high prices, they had the strong incomes to support strong spending. Right now, we're in a completely different situation where consumers across the board are telling us that labor markets are weakening. We have, more than 2/3 of consumers telling us that unemployment rates are going to rise in the year ahead. So the strong incomes that would normally support spending aren't really there now. Now, higher income people might still be willing to spend, but middle and lower income folks, they're likely to be looking for value.
When you say middle income, I would think you're talking about the 50%, but I'm guessing it's more like the 80%, right? I mean, how does this break up in terms of quintiles?
There isn't really a threshold here. It's sort of both an intersection of income as well as wealth. The highest wealth consumers with large stock portfolios, they have stable incomes. They also have, large portfolio values with the high stock market performance this year, supporting spending. Folks with smaller portfolios or no portfolios at all, or feel like their jobs are potentially threatened over the next year, they're the ones who are going to be less willing to go out on a limb to spend. They may still be willing to spend while they do have their jobs, but they're likely going to be looking for value and being choosy with where they spend their dollars.
When you do look at the distribution of income, though, Joanne, I would imagine that the mean is way higher than the median. How far up is it?
I mean, that is always the case because the distribution of both income and wealth are highly skewed, and that's not specific to this moment. That's been that way pretty much since we started collecting data nationally about income. So it is true that median income is much lower than the mean, and the folks at the top just have a lot more economic size to spend, and that's part of the reason why with aggregate spending, it's really the high income, high wealth folks that generate the lion's share of that.
All right, Joanne, great speaking to you. Thanks very much for your time. And it was a valiant effort over the weekend in the Big House. A lot of snow there. It's a tough team to take on. At the beginning, I was a little worried at the beginning that Michigan was going to have it. But being from Columbus, Ohio, I'm not unhappy about the outcome. Joanne Hsu there.